Welcome to the 2020 Brewtubers Online Brewers Club Yeast Experiment. Brought to you by our proud sponsors. Woody's Homebrew Store. Use code BREWTUBERS for 10% off your entire order and get free shipping on any order over $58. Go to www.woodyshomebrew.com. Imperial Yeast, a half stainless steel mash panel sponsor of the Brewtubers Online Brewers Club and official yeast provider of the Yeast Experiment. Imperial Yeast offers brewers of all sizes access to world-class yeast and the best possible customer and technical support. Be sure to grab a pack or two now at your local homebrew shop or Woody's Homebrew. And lastly, Hopsteiner, the official hops provider of the 2020 Yeast Experiment. Get brewing.
Hey, this is Jerry from Adventures in Homebrewing.beer. Got the recipe here for the Yeast Experiment IPA for the Brewtubers Yeast Experiment 2020. Got some supplies here and we're going to start to do some measuring out. Acid malt. Honey malt. Going for some 2-row. Hey guys, it's brew time. That's right. We are going to be brewing the Brewtubers Yeast Experiment 2020 beer. I've got my recipe here. I have all of my distilled water down there because we're going to be treating the water with some calcium chloride and gypsum, so everybody's got the same water profile. That's a super important thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out my minerals, and then I'm going to take a percentage of it in the water that's going in the mash, because with the mash and boil I can only put so much water in, and then I will also put a percentage of it into the water that I'm going to lauter with, so that way I'm getting the same water profile throughout. So this is coming from the teacher in me. This is why math is important, boys and girls. That's right, math is important, and knowing ratios is super important as well. So let's get some minerals going. Okay, for our next step, we're going to be taking 4 gallons and putting it in the mash and boil to heat that up for our mash. And I've measured out my minerals as well, so let's go ahead and do that. So one of the parts I love best about brewing is usually while I'm brewing, I have myself a beer. And being from the Rochester, New York area, upstate New York, I thought it was a great time to showcase a local beer. This is Genesee Dream Ale. It's actually a collaboration with Genesee. They're known for their cream ale, and also with Other Half, and so that's why it became a Genesee Dream Ale. It was a pretty hard beer to get a hold of. They did one collaboration run and it sold out pretty quick. There were a couple hundred people lined up outside the Genesee Brew House to get some, and so here it is, and I'm drinking it out of my Genesee Other Half collaboration Tiku. So you know, you can see it's got a nice color, and there's nothing better than enjoying a great beer. So right now we are still mashing, and there it is. We got a little bit of time left here before we sparge that out. So yeah. Okay. Mash and boil. Filled up with 4 gallons of water. It's got some minerals in there based off of a ratio of the minerals for a 10-gallon batch. For the 4 gallons that are in there, I'll also put in a ratio of the minerals for the sparge water as well to get myself up to the full capacity of what I need for the water for the batch. I've already gone through and ground all my grain. Okay, so we've done the mash. Doing a little draining here before I add the sparge water too. I want this to go down a little bit. You can hear it's a pretty good drain going on. We've got a nice solid grain bed in there, so we're going to add some sparge water to it. Again, this water has been treated. It was distilled water, and it was treated with some gypsum and calcium chloride. I'm going to put some in and let it drain a little bit. And then we're going to, after it drains down a little bit, we'll put some more in so we can keep pushing in all that nice sweet nectar into the main tank. And then we'll go ahead, we'll fire up the boil, and we'll get this thing rocking and rolling. What's up, guys? This is Jerry from AdventuresInHomebrewing.beer. We're working on the Brewtubers Yeast Experiment 2020. We've got a yeast starter here of the Mainiacal yeast Berserker blend that we made, and you can see we got a good amount of yeast down there that we'll be using. We got the mash and boil down here going with about 4 gallons of water. We got some fish from New Year's Eve jamming on the speaker here. It's always good to have some music while you're brewing. So my question to you is, what music do you listen to while you're brewing? I love me some fish. So we're going to be making a West Coast Pale Ale. I've got the grain already ground, and we've got our nifty recipe that we're using. There's some pale malt, some caramel, some honey malt, some acid malt, some carapils. We're going to be throwing in some Centennial and some Citra, and we'll be dry hopping with Simcoe later on after a cold crash. And we'll also be using a little bit of Irish moss in there to help clarify just a little bit that's in the boil. So we're going to follow these recipe steps along the way because we want everybody to have the same recipe, so that way when we send all of our bottles in and we get the bottles back, we'll get 1 bottle of each type of yeast, so that way we can do a true comparison to see which type of yeast does what for the same recipe. We're using some distilled water that has some gypsum and some calcium chloride in there, so we all have the same water profile, using the same hopping schedule and everything, so then that way everything's on par. So this should be a really fun time, and I hope you all enjoy it. So we're just getting to the boil now for the Yeast Experiment 2020 for Brewtubers, and to celebrate, it's time to crack a Rising Storm cherry, raspberry, pomegranate. It was written. Now, Rising Storm is a local upstate New York brewery that opened up a little bit more than a year ago. We're on almost a year and a half. They make lots of great beer. I love to drink their beer. So let's crack this open. So here we go. You can see a nice red color. This is a nice fruited sour. So good. So we've hit the boil, and now it's time for a little Centennial to go in. This is a addition at 45 minutes left of the boil. I use my hop spider because I realized that it helps have a slightly clearer trub. There's less trub when you go through and go to keg later on. And you just need to make sure that you do stir it up and get that movement of the wort going, and you should still do okay with the hop utilization. Now it's time for the next charge. We've got 3/4 of an ounce of Centennial going in. There we go. Now we got all the hops for during the boil. Our next addition is going to be during the steeped whirlpool stage, and then the final hops addition will be a day before it's done. So let's keep it going. So I just decanted a little bit more than a liter off of this, and this is all nice slurry in there and everything. So what's going to happen is I'm going to pitch some of this into the Brewtubers Yeast Experiment 2020, and then I'm also going to be saving some of it in liquid form for now. In a future time I'll probably go through and dry some out, because with the Kvike blend, that's the beautiful thing, you can dry it out and keep it for a really super long time. So you can see some nice yeast and suspension there. So this thing, once it's pitched, should take off pretty well and do some crazy fermentation at about 90 degrees. So now I'm getting ready to put the immersion chiller all the way in so I can get that sanitized and ready to go to chill this. Now for the Whirlpool Steeping Citra hops. Let that sit for a couple minutes, and then we'll chill this down to pitching temps. So now I've started the chilling phase of the Yeast Experiment 2020 beer, and I've got some cold water coming right in off of the water main going in here, and I'm going to be moving the immersion chiller up and down to get the cold water agitated throughout, and then I've got it going into some different containers over here because I don't have a drain handy right here. If I was doing this outside, then I would just let it run down the driveway, but because I'm inside, I'm going to have to do this. But the first one I'm going to hold as hot water to clean the immersion chiller when it's done.
Talk about a beast of a yeast. It's been less than 6 hours since I pitched the yeast,
in this Yeast Experiment 2020 for Brewtubers. This is the Mainiacal Yeast Berserker blend, and look at the action on that airlock already. And again, this is under 6 hours from when I pitched it. Right about 12 hours right now since pitching the yeast. You can see that it's super active, and the smell right here is just absolutely citrus hoppy. So we're at 60 hours since I initially pitched the yeast. Maybe a little bit less at this point. But you'll notice that there's no more activity in the airlock. I actually took a sample last night to double check, and last night, just short of 48 hours, it was at 1.013. So this Berserker yeast really did go berserker and crush this thing. So now it's going to be time to cold crash this so we can get ready for the dry hop. What's up, guys? This is Jerry from Adventures in Homebrewing.beer, and guess what time it is? Time for a little depth charge. Yep, that's right. I am going to be dry hopping my Brewtubers Yeast Experiment 2020 beer with a little Simcoe. And so it's been out here cold crashing because, you know, thanks to living in the Northeast, it's been nice and chilly lately. So let's see. It's in there. And here goes the depth charge. Bloop. Little dry hop. Then we're going to close that back up. And yeah, we're going to let this bad boy dry hop a little bit for a while. Then we're going to keg it and force carbonate it, and then some of it will be bottled and shipped off to the other Brewtuber Yeast Experiment participants so they can have some and we can all test it side by side. To give you just an idea again, this was a recipe that all of us brewed following the same guidelines and the same water profile and everything, and then we used different yeast. So from Mainiacal Labs, I used the Berserker Kvike blend yeast, which is a blend of a few different Kvikes, and I fermented at 90 degrees, and in under 60 hours it was already at 48 hours it was at 1.013 for a gravity, and then I let it go for about another 12 hours before I brought it out to cold crash because I figured it would clean itself up a little bit. So I'm expecting the final gravity to be just a little bit lower than that. And with the dry hop, it smells so good in here. So with that, we'll see you guys when it's time to do a little transfer. What's up, everybody? We are now on the process of getting ready to keg this. This is the Brewtubers Yeast Experiment 2020. This was brewed with Mainiacal yeast, the Berserker blend. It was fermented at 90 degrees, and then it was cold crashed, and we dry hopped it a little bit with some Simcoe. And so now let's take a gravity reading and also keg it. So for this transfer, I decided to set it up with the bouncer. So I've got a bouncer down here hooked up to my siphon, and I'm going to go ahead and siphon it off because I figured, why not get some of the dregs out? So you see we got a nice siphon going now. It's going through the red screen on the bouncer, which is the original screen that came with that. I figured I'd go with just to get some of that trub out along the way. We got a nice color going through. And looking at it, beautiful color there, really hazy, so that's a very nice thing. You can see that there's some decent stuff that's getting filtered out by the bouncer here as it goes through. I typically use a refractometer to go through and measure my gravity, but this time, you know, had to go with the old hydrometer. So that means that, yep, we get to sample a little bit. It's got a very nice flavor. I can't wait to see what it tastes like when it's carbonated. So now we're on to the moment of truth. We've done the transfer from the mash and boil to the keg, And I unscrewed this. I haven't opened it up yet. Let's see what we got in here. Oh yeah. Filtered out some decent shrub there. Gotta love the bouncer. Thank you, bouncer, for helping keep that out of my keg. A little bit of sludge in this fermenter here from the ferment at 90 degrees. You can see that's some nice stuff. That fermented beautifully. Well guys, it's ready to go through, and so I've got my perlick tap here. I've got a growler filler on here because I know that that's also going to help me with the bottle. I have adjusted my pressure inside on the regulator to drop it down a little bit. I want to get some beer flowing in the lines, just so to minimize foam a little bit. Also to give myself a drink. So you can see some nice beer here. It's got some nice color to it. A little florally, a little West Coasty. Hopefully everybody's going to like this in the yeast experiment. So I'm going to have my beer off to the side. I might be drinking a little bit as I'm doing some bottling, but it's time to do some bottling. Which, by the way, I haven't bottled beer in like 2.5, almost 3 years. So this is a strange event because I love putting it in kegs. So here goes. Why I kept the bucket around. We're going to do a little cleanup before we continue here. First of all, get out the capper. Tap that bad boy. I'm going to pause and do some cleanup. Aisle 13. Kind of anticipated that, so I figured I'd be a little proactive and have the bucket here since, you know, I am going solo. So I've switched my system a little bit. Instead of putting the tap on and off all the time, I'm using the flow control on this furlet tap, which is a great feature to have. If you don't have one, it's great for when you've got different beers. You can kind of adjust your pressure a little bit and fill in growlers. It's great too. And this is a nice little growler filler that fits in there that obviously does bottles too. So just a little bit more prep work for me to do before I ship these off to the other participants in the Yeast 2020 experiment for Brewtubers. I have to create a label. It's not going to be anything fancy. It's just going to say what the beer is, what I fermented it at, the yeast, when I bottled it, when I kegged it, all that good stuff. So they've got that. So when they do reviews, they know what they're working with. Yeah, the fruits of my labor, but really, honestly, I still have part of the keg down there, and I'm going to get 12 other bottles of beer with 12 other yeasts. I mean, come on. What's wrong with that? Nothing with that. Have fun, my friends. Hey guys, it's probably one of your best dressed bottling beer guys that you'll ever see. I mean, how many guys do you see dressed up like this bottling beer? So, I've gone through and I've bottled 12 bottles of excellent, excellent beer for the Brewtubers Yeast Experiment 2020. And so now all I have to do is make some labels and then we'll be good to go. And so here's what it looks like. And it's pretty yummy. 7%, a little bit over 7%. And it doesn't drink like a 7%, and it's totally crushable, and I might have had a couple the other night. Me and a buddy split a growler. It wasn't a big deal. No big deal. So with that, we'll see ya.